Please, Narracott, I need my bag as soon as possible.
Mrs. Rogers needs my help. I'd best try to find Dr. Armstrong's medical bag and deliver it to him immediately. I don't think that's appropriate. Nothing else to see about. I can't take that.
Perhaps we can talk later. For now, I must see to my patient. Thank you, Mr. Narracott. I am in your debt. Perhaps we can talk later. For now...
Now, Rogers, tell us about that extraordinary voice.
It was Mr. Owen, sir. In his letter, he wrote to me to put it on the gramophone once you were all settled in here after dinner.
That was Mr. Owen's voice?
You doubt that it was?
No. I thought I recognized it. I'm sure I'm mistaken.
A disgraceful practical joke.
You think it was a joke?
What else could it be?
I will need to hear more evidence before offering an opinion.
Mr. Marston and I carried Mrs. Rogers to her room. I gave her a mild sedative. She's resting comfortably.
Whoever it was on that recording, that person knows or has taken the trouble to find out a good deal about us all. He was correct about Seton. I presided at the trial, but all I did was execute a guilty man.
I remember the case. As I recall, there was some talk.
Happily, guilt and innocence are decided by those of us qualified to make a judgment, not by gossip. Of course, there is one omission in that recording. Mr. Narracott, of course. Although to hear Mr. Blore tell it, he might have earned a place on that list had Mr. Owen been so inclined.
Any truth to the accusation against you?
It's a matter of interpretation, you understand. But I'd have to say, yes.
Will you tell me how it happened?
Elderly woman. Whatever. I'd been up all night with an emergency case. My nerves were shot, hands shaking. But I had to operate. I had to try and save her. I had a pick-me-up or two to steady myself, but I bungled it. It wasn't the drink, I swear. It was an accident. Could have happened to anyone in my profession.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
Owen sent me a note, asking me to have a look at his wife, who's been suffering from arthritis and muscle spasms.
What was the gossip concerning the Seton case?
I'm not one to spread gossip to just anyone about a man as distinguished as Justice Wargrave. If I were certain about it, perhaps. But I'm not.
That is all for now, Dr. Armstrong. The time for talk has passed. Any truth to the accusation against you?
The name sounded vaguely familiar. I expect it will come to me.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
Got a wire from a pal of mine, Badger Barkley. Surprised me at the time because I had an idea the old horse had gone to Norway. Told me to roll up here.
Good evening, Mr. Marston. Any truth to the accusation against you?
There isn't a word of truth in it. Miss Brady was always in poor health. Always. From the time we came to her.
Will you tell me how it happened?
There was a storm, as fierce as the one brewing outside right now when she was taken bad. The telephone was out of order. I went for the doctor on foot, but he got there too late.
Were you mentioned in the will?
Barely. Certainly not what we were led to believe. She was just saying it, you see, to ensure our devotion to her. Beg pardon. I'm not sure what came over me just then. The strain of tonight, I expect, and worry over Mrs. Rogers, of course.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
Isn't that obvious, sir? My wife and I were hired through an agency in Plymouth. Manservant, housekeeper, cook, that's what we are.
I appreciate your candor, Mr. Rogers. Any truth to the accusation against you?
Look, Narracott, if that's what you want to call yourself. The rules have changed. Can't you see that? The past is past. It's the present we should be worrying about. Something is not right here.
Will you tell me how it happened?
All right. Perhaps I was doing the odd favor for the Purcells. But if your brother was framed, I had nothing to do with it. Yes, they paid me to perjure myself about Landor. Thanks to them, I was able to put enough away to set up my own detective agency. Nothing fancy, but I've been straight ever since, I swear.
Landor died.
He got penal servitude for life and died in Dartmoor a year later. Not my fault he was such a delicate man.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
I run a little detective agency in Plymouth these days. I'm on a job. Protect Mrs. Owen's jewels, the letter said. Mrs. Owen, my foot. I don't believe there's any such person.
Thanks, Blore. Any truth to the accusation against you?
Beatrice Taylor was in service with me. Not a nice girl, as I found out too late. Loose. No morals whatsoever.
Will you tell me how it happened?
It was some time before I found out she was what they call in trouble. Her parents were decent folk, too. I'm glad to say they did not condone her behavior when I told them of it.
What happened to Beatrice?
Naturally, I did not keep her an hour under my roof. No one shall ever say that Emily Brent condoned immorality.
How did she die?
Not content with having one sin on her conscience, she committed a still graver sin. She took her own life, threw herself in the river. If she had behaved like a decent young woman, she'd be alive today.
You have no regrets?
She made an excellent breakfast. I miss that. Fresh juice every day.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
I received a letter with a signature that was not very easy to read. It purported to be from a woman I'd met at a certain summer resort 2 or 3 years ago. I am quite certain I have never met or become friendly with anyone of the name of Owen.
I overheard you mention St. Trednick to Miss Claythorne.
I was staying at a seaside hotel near St. Trednick this same week of August 4 years ago. That boy Cyril Hamilton drowned near there. It was the talk of the town. His half-brother was much older. Hugo, I think his name was. Cyril was a vile child, by all accounts, but first in line for the family title and estates. When he died, it all went to Hugo. He was just about Miss Claythorne's age. There was talk of something between them.
You're suggesting Vera let the boy drown so the man she loved could inherit?
That would be idle gossip. I don't indulge in idle gossip. I've only told you the facts of the case as I remember them.
That is all, Miss Brett. Any truth to the accusation against you?
I admit it's a ghastly story, but I can't say it's wrong. Owen did his research well. The accusation is absolutely true.
Will you tell me how it happened?
It was written up in the papers at the time. A story of self-preservation, pure and simple. A hunting party lost in the bush. The great white hunter checks the food supplies, assesses his chances, and clears out on his own.
Leaving 21 men to die.
Not very Puka Sahib, I'm afraid.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
Owen's attorney, a man named Archibald Morris, rang up one day. He wanted to give me 100 guineas to join this house party. I was to put myself at Owen's disposal in case my rather specialized talents were required.
What specialized talents would those be?
You might say I'm a good man in a scrap.
Thank you, Lombard.
Interesting history Shipwreck Island has. I'd studied up on it before I came down.
What are the names of those two people I'm accused of killing?
John and Lucy Combs. I made a note of it.
Must have been a couple of kids I ran over near Cambridge. Beastly bad luck.
For them or for you?
Well, I was thinking for me, but of course you're right, sir. It was damned bad luck on them. Of course it was a pure accident. They rushed out of some cottage or other. Beastly nuisance. English roads are hopeless, of course. Can't get up a decent pace on them. Well, anyway, it wasn't my fault. This man is dead.
Did Marston choke to death?
You can call it choking if you like. He died of asphyxiation right enough.
Was Marston poisoned?
Can't say exactly. Everything points to one of the cyanides. No distinctive smell of prussic acid. Probably potassium cyanide. It acts pretty well instantaneously.
Was there something in the whiskey?
Yes, without a doubt.
Could he have been murdered?
Not my line of country. I'm a doctor, not a detective.
What do you think that record means?
A disgraceful and heartless practical joke, I suppose.
Do you think it was suicide?
Seems like it.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
Not I, personally or professionally.
That is all for now, Dr. Armstrong. Do you think it was suicide?
You conduct yourself well, Mr. Narracott, if you don't mind my saying so. Mr. Blore has told us that you are not what you appear, yet you told him you were not a detective.
No, sir. But I've read many detective novels. I even had one of those junior detective kits when I was a boy. Magnifying glass, fingerprint powder.
Junior detective kit. Wonderful.
Ah, an amateur sleuth then. You appear to have something of a gift for it.
About the suicide, Judge.
I'm not yet prepared to offer an opinion.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
I knew his father, the Duke, and his elder brother, Like so many younger sons of his class, Anthony Marsden was a bit of a wastrel, as you will have gathered. There were other rumors of late, of his dabbling in politics, but this is not the proper forum for that discussion.
What do you think that record means?
May I answer that in a moment after asking a question of my own?
Of course.
Does anyone know Mr. Owen's full name?
My letter was signed only U.N. Owen.
Yes, U.N. Owen. Or, by a slight stretch of fancy, unknown. I'll now answer your question, Mr. Narracott. The name, the recording, the circumstances under which all but you were lured to this island. I have no doubt in my mind that we have been invited here by a madman, very possibly a dangerous, homicidal lunatic.
Why did you retire, Judge?
I know there was talk about my competence, even my ego running wild, but the truth of it is very simple. My health. A lifetime sentencing my fellow man, and now a higher power has passed judgment on me.
Thank you kindly, Judge. Do you think Marston committed suicide?
You'd never think he would kill himself. He was so alive. When he came down that hill in his car, he looked... Oh, I can't explain.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
No, I'm sure I would have remembered.
Steady, Miss Claythorne. The lad had his faults, you know.
What do you think that record means?
It was unfair, what it said. Very unfair.
You seem to be a remarkably perceptive girl, Miss Claythorne.
Why, thank you, Mr. Narracott.
Is there anything you can tell me about our fellow castaways?
Castaways? You make it sound so...
Romantic?
I was going to say dramatic. Let me see. No one has confided any secrets to me, I'm afraid. Oh, except one.
That is...
I really don't know you well enough to answer you.
Much obliged for your assistance, Miss Claythorne. The time for talk has passed. Do you think Marston committed suicide?
He didn't seem particularly remorseful. Of course, the record might have set him off somehow. A new incident long after the fact may create a strong feeling of guilt or fear. Wouldn't you say, Doctor?
Possible. Quite possible.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
Heard of him, but we'd never crossed paths or swords.
What do you think that record means?
There is something wrong with this entire weekend, and especially with our host, Mr. Owen.
I believe we're all coming around to that conclusion.
Yes, but I know something you don't, Judge.
What is that?
I recognized the voice on that recording, and it was definitely not Mr. Owen.
Who was it?
Not so fast, Narracott. Not until I think things through a bit more.
Thank you, Lombard. Do you think it was suicide?
How dare you? My wife died of natural causes, sir. A long illness, nothing more.
I meant Marston.
Marston? No honor in him that I could see.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
No, I don't think so. Not a military man, I'd wager. Lombard now. He reminds me of someone from my command. But the name wasn't Lombard.
What do you think that record means?
Ugly. After 30 years. Ugly thing to say.
I am indebted to you for your help, General Mackenzie. General, you said you thought you recognized Lombard.
Did I? Yes, I expect I did. But I fail to see what business it might be of yours.
Good evening, General. The time for talk has passed. I have more important... Do you think Marston committed suicide?
Yes. In my experience, certain types of individuals, when faced with their sin, will then commit the greater one.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
No.
What do you think that record means?
There is something very peculiar about it.
Thank you, Miss Brett. Do you think Marston committed suicide?
I shouldn't have said Mr. Marston was a suicidal type of gentleman at all.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
Never clapped eyes on him. And who gave you the authority to question us?
You're under no obligation to answer me. What do you think that record means?
I don't like it. Not one bit. Very queer, the whole situation.
Thanks, Blore.
Where have you been, Rogers?
I went to check on my wife, sir. She is resting comfortably. But I'm afraid I have some distressing news.
Oh?
One of the china figures of a sailor boy has been broken off.
Chapter 2. 9 little sailor boys sat up very late. One overslept himself, and then there were 8.
Filthy night. I tried to go out to get some more wood for the fire, but the wind drove me back.
A storm like that will keep us all indoors.
My apologies for the accommodations, Mr. Narracott, but all the beds are taken.
Makes one wonder where the Owens were planning to sleep, doesn't it?
A good servant follows instructions, sir. He does not question his employer, unless you'd like to share the deceased's room with the corpse.
This will do fine. Thank you, Rogers.
I'll wish you a good night then, sir.
Everyone should be sound asleep by now. Good time for a little stealth work.